It is time for the NFL Every Game on the Board podcast with our first guest up, Rob Veno. Robbie, welcome into the podcast. How are you?
Good afternoon, Drew. Happy Friday. I'm ready for another big football weekend, so lots to talk about here in the NFL.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy Friday to you. Happy Friday to all the listeners out there. Let's start at the top of the NFL card here. 451-452, 9:30 a.m. Eastern kick. You know what that means. On the other side of the pond, we got Tennessee at LA Chargers. I guess you could use the word at. Neutral site game here. 45 the total, 6.5 or 7s out there. See it, Chris showing 7. The LA Chargers are laying pretty much everywhere else at 6.5. Robbie, what do you got on the venue and also the matchup here with Tennessee versus the Chargers?
Well, it's, interesting in London. Last week we saw Seattle play Oakland there, right? In Seattle, Oakland winds up being a pretty pathetic game, 27-3. Seattle never in trouble. For the most part, these London games have been a bit more entertaining than that. I'm sure that the NFL would like for their games over there to be more entertaining than that. We'll see if this one can provide some. But, boy, if you go on recent history of what the Tennessee Titans have provided us offensively, might not be excitement here either. Last week, just to go over some quick numbers in that Baltimore Ravens game, the Ravens convert 12 of 17 third downs, 71% of their third downs against this Titans defense, which is really good. And in contrast to that, Tennessee goes 1 for 10, 10% conversion on third down. That led to their 23-0 loss. The last 2 weeks, offensively, after what may have been a complete mirage against the Philadelphia Eagles 3 weeks ago, that overtime win where Tennessee threw for over 300 yards. But let's just take the last 2 weeks, Drew. The 23-0 loss to the Ravens, the 13-12 loss to the Buffalo Bills. Tennessee's run 93 plays total in 2 games. That's not a lot, average of 46.5 per game. On those 93 plays, 327 total yards, 3.5 per pop. That's not going to get it done against the Chargers defense that's gotten better as time's going on. Obviously, they suffered the key injury to Joey Bosa to start the season. Pass rush wasn't the same. Pass rush has found a way to come around a little bit here for the Chargers, which is important. 3 of the last 4 games Tennessee's played, they've scored 12 points or less. So this is really a big spot for them to try and provide some offense. The team landed in England this morning, got right to it. All the practice reports I read from this morning sound positive coming from Tennessee Titan mouths. We'll see what happens on the field. Don't know that I want to lay the 7 points here with LA, which has really gotten to be a superb, dynamic, balanced offense here, Drew. Last week against Cleveland, for those who watched that game, you saw that they went to an outside running game time after time after time and just punished Cleveland on the outside. Most of the time when teams run sweeps or towards the outside, they end up in holding calls, but LA's found a way to block that play really, really well, whether it be a reverse, whether it be just a straight sweep to the back. Real good against Cleveland last week. Tennessee, I'm sure, will have that be on notice to try and defend that. I think under is a good way to go here, Drew. 45 points to me seems like a lot. I know Los Angeles has had a lot of success offensively behind Phillip Rivers this year, but that Tennessee defense pretty stout. And one key member of that defense, Wesley Woodyard, linebacker, is back for the Titans this week after missing the prior 2 weeks, making their defense even stronger. So I don't see a lot of offense out of Tennessee, but I think there'll be reduced offense out of the Chargers as well.
All right, Robbie, on to the 10 a.m. Pacific kicks. We got New England at the Chicago Bears. Looks like the Pats laying 2.5 on the highway, 48.5 the total.
Yeah, I think the most interesting thing I came up with here in this game, Drew, is the fact that last week against Brock Osweiler, not Ryan Tannehill, but Brock Osweiler, the Chicago Bears faced 44 pass attempts and got 0 sacks. Khalil Mack and company, ever since game 1 of the season, it's just been a media talking point, whether written or on television, how solid the Bears defense is and how great that pass rush is now with Mack. Khalil Mack has stolen almost all the thunder from any other Bears player to date. but last week they come up with no sacks in 44 attempts against Osweiler. That either has to be somewhat of a mirage, or it's got to be due to the fact that Adam Gase and company figured out a way to slow down that Bears pass rush. The Bears had 18 sacks in their first 4 games, 4.5 per contest, end up with 0 in 44 attempts. To me, that's a big number. And if anybody can avoid sacks and keep pressure off of them, it's the Patriots with Tom Brady and all his weapons in tow right now. The ball comes out quick, doesn't give the Bears a lot of time. So it's going to be a crucial matchup in this game. Do the Bears come back to what they were showing us the first 4 games defensively with the pressure? Or does Brady get the ball out quick and the Bears' secondary scrambles a little bit? Because secondary is not the strength of this team, and with Prince Amukamara out, or at least questionable for this game, it's somewhat of a banged-up or thin Bears secondary. I would look to the Patriots here. I always find them to be good in these types of situations under a field goal. I know road games haven't been great for them as of late, but I think the matchup just falls in favor of them with their passing game, that quick rhythm passing attack. We'll see how the Bears combat it, but I don't think there'll be a lot of quarterback sacks going on in this contest.
Robbie, we've got 455-456 Cleveland at Tampa Bay, 51 the total. Looks like the Bucks laying 3.5 at home.
Tampa. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. It's looking ahead. One more game to Carolina, Philadelphia. Drew, sorry about that.
Oh, no worries.
All of the games that are being played this week, this is the only game that's seen a push towards the over in the total. This game has been bet pretty heavily and recently. I mean, within the last hour, it climbed again up to 51.5 in a couple of offshore spots. But like I say, on the entire card, either totals have remained the same or gone down, bet towards the under. This is the only one we see getting a push toward the over, and maybe rightfully so. Tampa Bay's defense has been pretty much sieve-like all season long when it comes to the pass. Been a pretty good run defense, and in fact, when you go through Tampa Bay statistics, you find pretty similar on both sides of the ball. They can't run it, but they throw it real well. They can't stop they can stop the run, but they can't stop the pass whatsoever. Baker Mayfield, after seeing the 2 defenses he saw the last 2 weeks, probably gets back into a rhythm here offensively. Now, I think we have to note the fact that the Cleveland wide receiving core is a little bit shorthanded here. Last week in that Chargers game, they were down to 3 healthy wide receivers. Not a lot of depth there, but maybe against this Tampa Bay secondary, he can find some openings for his guys. I'm sure they will be able to get a little bit more separation than what they got against the Chargers last week. It seemed like Chargers D-backs were glued to these receivers all over the field. The other side of the coin, Jameis Winston in that shootout last week against Atlanta falls short. He had a couple of turnovers in that game, but I think getting that one under his belt probably helps here. Tampa Bay is the type of offense, though, or passing offense that really looks for intermediate to long-range passes, Drew, which helps opposing pass rushes a little bit. I wonder if Cleveland with Myles Garrett can get to Tampa Bay here, because Tampa Bay's pass plays generally are longer developing plays. 51.5 right now. You're starting to mow through key numbers when it comes to totals. 52 would be next on deck. 28-24, 31-21, a whole bunch of ways to get to 52. If you like over, probably suggest you do it now. I don't know that I'll be able to. I think some of the value's gone. Probably wanted to get in the beginning before we've seen this push. It may push even higher as the weekend goes. I'm not really sure how the remainder of the betting will go on this game. Tough game to call. I'd probably prefer the Cleveland side just because they're more equipped defensively, but you have to be somewhat leery of that Tampa Bay offense and their ability to quick strike. So for me, pass on the side. I think if you're going to play total, you probably want to play it right now today before it gets any higher.
Robbie, good stuff so far. And guys, coupon code VENO7, that's VENO, with the number 7, half off. Rob Veno's 7-day all access. You get the NFL, college football, and MLB, any plays that Rob is releasing, all sports. Next 7 days for half off with the coupon code VENO7. Rob, next up we got Detroit at Miami. A game I'll be attending my first NFL game in I think 3 years. We were just talking off recording about that, and so I'm really excited about kind of getting out. And Rob, being in this business, it's tough to go to games because especially on Saturdays with college football, because you just miss so much else. And we were talking. It's been a while since you've been at a live game as well, huh?
Yeah, it's been a couple of years for me. I was at a Seattle Rams game a couple of years back in Seattle. It's nice to be inside some of these stadiums when you can, Drew, but I agree with you. It's, with what we do, it's far better to be in front of 6 different monitors, television, computer, whatever you have available, than it is to just be at one game where you lose track of what's going on around you. But, that was a real good experience for me. That Seattle Stadium's extremely nice and loud, and like I was saying to you, in the middle of December, I'll be at a Thursday nighter, Kansas City and the Chargers out at Arrowhead, which competes with Seattle for that highest decibel sound inside. So excited to be there as well. Generally, though, not too many games witnessed live by myself.
Yeah, it's tough to get them in this business overall. But anybody out there, if you're heading to this game in South Florida, feel free to hit me up on Twitter at DrewMartinBets. Maybe get up, grab a beer at the game. But it's Detroit at Miami. An interesting one because we got Detroit laying 3 on the road. Also some quarterback issues that you mentioned before. Tannehill, I just read the Sun Sentinel article. He's not going to be playing again this week, it sounds like. So they're catching 3 now at home, 46.5. How would you look to bet the Lions and Dolphins here, Robbie?
Well, you can put me at the front of that camp that says, show it to me twice, Brock Osweiler, before I get involved with Miami. I know Adam Gase has a history with him, dating back to Denver, where he was a complete failure. Then everywhere he's been a complete failure as far as NFL football is concerned, up until last week, where out of the blue against one of the best pass rushes, like we discussed earlier in the NFL, he produces 31 points and an overtime victory for his team, 31-28 over the Bears. In fact, once Chicago got ahead in that game, it looked as if, they would probably be able to hang on to that, but no way. Brock Osweiler came right back from a couple of deficits and, like I say, led that 31-28 victory. I don't know that I can see that type of performance again out of him, Drew. Miami's loaded with speed on the offensive side of the football. Adam Gase prefers it that way. He's got a real nice playbook. But Detroit's had a week off. They went into their bye off of that 31-23 win against Green Bay. If you take a look at their point totals, the last 4 games before they hit the bye week, 27 against the 49ers, and that's not saying much because the 49ers aren't a great defensive team. They beat New England at home 26-10, scored 24 more against Dallas, which we are seeing evolve into one of the better defensive teams in the NFL, and then 31 against Green Bay. Matt Stafford's going to put up points here against the Miami Dolphins. I don't think there's any question about that. The question to be answered is, can Miami do what they did last week? I don't think it happens. Laying 3 on the road with the Lions is about as dangerous a thing as you could probably get involved with. However, if I was to play this game, I really would look for a regression out of the Miami offense. And I think Detroit, with the extra week to get ready for this, probably comes in pretty good defensive shape. Ezekiel Ansah, their top pass rusher, looks like a go here. And the defense as a whole has faced a couple of really good offensive attacks the last 3 weeks and done pretty well against them. So sign me up for Detroit, I guess, even though, like I say, -3 on the road is not really a spot you want to get involved with frequently when you're backing the Lions.
Hey, Robbie, you bring up a lot of speed on the Dolphins. How about this guy, Albert Wilson, man? Watching these games, he is just on a kind of – he goes into a next gear, He kind of came out of nowhere. I believe he went to Georgia State in the Sun Belt, if I remember right. I mean, where did he come from? Have you known about this guy for a while now?
Yeah, you saw him in Kansas City last year. I mean, Tyreek Hill gets all the speed attraction for KC, but Albert Wilson was right there with him, and he made a lot of big plays for that team in Andy Reid's offense. Another a very good offensive playbook. These two guys, Andy Reid and Adam Gase, they know how to get these guys in space and use their speed. Albert Wilson on reverses or deep patterns or those quick hitch patterns, and watch him go. And the kid Jakeem Grant from Texas Tech, right? Another guy we've seen a lot of on this Miami team. So it's a smaller wide receiving core. Kenny Stills, but all three of these guys lightning quick. Detroit will have to defend that. I think the best way I saw this team defended all season long was by New England in that 38-7 win, where New England just took their corners right up to the line of scrimmage and pressed these guys and didn't let them get off of the line. That's probably the way you have to go, because if they get a couple of steps, you could say goodbye to these receivers for Miami. They're extremely fast.
Yeah, I mean, he only stands at 5'9". Obviously an under-recruited kid having to play in the Sun Belt there at Georgia State. And he's from South Florida, so he's back at home. Anyway, just watching that game, man, he was pretty surprising. A fun guy to watch there for the Miami Dolphins offense. We'll move down the card here. We got 459, 460. Carolina Panthers at the Philadelphia Eagles. 44.5 the total. Defending Super Bowl champions laying 4.5 at home, Robbie.
Finally broke out last week in what was a miserable effort by the New York Giants, but give Philly credit. They took advantage. They got out early in that game and coasted home 34-13. However, statistically, and I know that, when a team is behind, a lot of garbage yardage can be accumulated, but the Giants did outgain Philadelphia in that contest, 401-379. Now, the problem I have, and the argument to the statement that I just made is where I said a lot of yardage can be made in garbage time. The counter to that is when you have a team like the Eagles and you have a defensive front seven that's the strength of your team, especially that front line, the depth of the rotation of that defensive line is extremely strong for the Philadelphia Eagles. When you have a team like that and you have a lead where you obviously know that the opposing team has to throw to catch up, and the opposing quarterback is as immobile as Eli Manning, the old phrase, the defense now knows that they can pin their ears back and go get him. You wonder where that goes sometimes. If you have a team in a score disadvantaged situation to where they have to throw and you have a defense like the Eagles, the Giants shouldn't get garbage yardage. They really shouldn't. They should get sacked time and time again with Eli Manning as their quarterback. Didn't happen. Gained 401. It leads me to put a few question marks next to the Philadelphia win. Drew, that defensive secondary has been terrible all season long, led by Jalen Mills. And now you're going to face Cam Newton with his full complement of weapons back for the second week in a row. Remember, he got Greg Olsen, the tight end, back last week. They also got Thomas Davis back at linebacker last week. They outgained Washington in their contest. They lose to Washington. They got behind 14-0 real early in that game. But from there on out, it really was a Panther game with the Panthers' chance to win that game at the end. They were marching into Washington territory and then turned it over on downs for the final of 23-17. But they hold Washington to 288 yards, 4.3 per play, while they're gaining 350. So a big total yardage advantage there. Didn't make a lot of use of Christian McCaffrey, which was surprising to me. Probably see him a lot here. I'm really interested in taking points with the Panthers. I think that both of those results last week are somewhat skewed. Carolina playing an NFC East team on the road for the second week in a row. We'll see how they do. Sometimes that's problematic, but I don't think it'll be for this team, which is healthy as it's been in a while. I still don't trust the Eagles, Drew. I know Carson Wentz looked better. The opponent wasn't much of an opponent that night. They gave up on tackling in the second half. I think Carolina plus points might be a way to go there.
Guys, coupon code Veno7, half off his 7-day all-access, includes all of his NFL, college football, and Major League Baseball that Robbie releases. We got one game left here, Robbie, but before we get to that, we were talking before we started to record about weather issues. As we get into late October, it's something, as you're going down the card, you really got to you got to take into account and kind of just research the weather, put in the zip code of the stadium or however you want to do it, the city even, into Google, check out the weather. Is there anything you wanted to throw out for the listeners as far as things that caught your eye, whether for NFL or even college football, if that's top of mind?
Yeah, the NFL really is going to be a clean weekend weather-wise, Drew. They're lucky. The Saturday games, especially through the MAC conference and some Big Ten spots, you've got issues, and mostly issues. And there's going to be a lot of possible small rain showers, which don't bother you too much unless it's a steady rain all game long. But there's wind conditions as a general rule of thumb. And I know wind is something that all of us in the handicapping and betting world will consider a top of our weather cautionary list. But some guys take it to an extreme, I think. I personally don't. Most of these quarterbacks, and know who your quarterbacks are before you go crazy over wind conditions in a game. The general rule of thumb I have is if it's going to be 20 miles per hour or more in college, it could be an issue to where teams only get 2 good quarters into the wind throwing the football. In the NFL, you could bump it up to about 25. Drew, most of these guys have arm strength that can cut right through 25-mile-an-hour winds. It's not that big of a deal in the NFL. That's my tipping point for NFL. 20 is somewhat of a tipping point in college football, depending upon the quarterback. So just look for that. If you're dealing with 14, 16, 17-mile-an-hour winds, to me, passing games aren't really affected in college or pro football. So look for those key numbers. College 20 miles per hour plus, NFL 25 miles per hour plus, and then you got to sit down and evaluate. Up to that point, I don't think there's much to worry about.
Great handicapping tidbits there, Robbie. And remember his coupon code VENO7, half off his 7-day all-access sportsmemo.com. Last game up, Robbie, before we move on to the next segment and finish out the NFL card. We got 461, 462. Buffalo at Indianapolis, 43 the total, with the Colts laying 7 at home, Robbie.
Yeah, boy, I mean, can Andrew Luck throw the football any more than he's thrown it this year? Drew, I mean, it's crazy that the guy comes in to the season where it was doubtful that, or not doubtful, but there were some questions how good his arm would be off of the injury. And what they've done is they put the ball in his hands and just told him to throw it because we can't run it. I think he threw it 43 more times last week. Had some picks in that Jets game that really hurt his team's chances to win a very high-scoring contest. And he basically has to throw the ball to outscore the opposition in these games that the Colts play because their defense has just allowed points as if it was Halloween and you're handing out candy here. The Indianapolis Colts, over the course of the last 3 games, have allowed 92 points. They've scored 92 points and allowed 117. Now, if you can score 34, 24, and 34 3 straight weeks, you should win some games. And the Colts lost all 3 of those by allowing 37, 38, and 42. So Buffalo's offense, which is dormant and which will go to a new quarterback in Derek Anderson, longtime veteran. He's had his ups, he's had his downs. When he's right, he can be pretty effective. And against this Indianapolis defense, maybe he will be pretty effective. Everybody else seems to have been against Indianapolis. So for that reason, I could look ever so slightly toward the total and ever so slightly toward the Buffalo Bills because they certainly – I mean, there's no doubting the fact that they have a defensive advantage in this game. They're far better on the defensive side than Indianapolis is. However, Andrew Luck has been through some pretty good defenses and harsh pass rushes so far this season and come out really with flying colors statistically. So to me, if you're going to look here, give a look toward the over in this contest. I know it's not easy to go buy a ticket on a Bills game up and over the total, especially when the quarterback play has been so sporadic. But maybe Derek Anderson helps them out a little bit here. And I'm pretty sure, off of what we've seen, that Andrew Luck is just fine, and that offense, especially with T.Y. Hilton back in the fold this week, healthy as he's been for this season, I think that they're going to get their share of points as well.
Robbie, great stuff on the NFL Every Game on the Board podcast. Go check out sportsmemo.com. Robbie's 4 and 5% plays in football, 31 and 20, 60% on the year. That includes all of the top-rated plays in NFL and college football. He's got his coupon code VENO7 for half off his 7-day all access pass. And guys, just check out sportsmemo.com. A lot up. We got a 5% play tonight on the college football ranks. Teddy's red hot. Robbie, obviously 60% on his top plays, red hot. A lot of handicappers doing very well at Sports Memo, so make sure to check it out. Got a lot of information, betting tidbits. We'll be back with McGinnis to finish out the NFL Every Game on the Board podcast.